Let's talk about The Matrix Reloaded, a movie that I really love. And you might think I'm crazy and you might be Xing out this video. Don't. I already made a video on The Matrix talking about why I think it's one of the best movies ever, but I'm also a Reloaded apologist, a movie that very much goes in a different direction and is notoriously kind of like the downward spiral for this trilogy. But I got a lot to say. I've been wanting to talk about these movies and go on record about them before The Matrix 4 or whatever it's called releases. Yes, they're making that. Yes, it could be awesome or a complete disaster. Either way, it's a good reason to revisit some of my favorites. So check out that other one if you haven't seen it already, but let's continue to thank the algorithm here. And The Matrix Reloaded is obviously a shift change from the original Matrix, where the original Matrix is a film and it's deep and it builds this universe and it's atmospheric. Matrix Reloaded is balls to the walls. It has a little bit too much money. It's a little bit too full of itself. But for me personally, ever since I saw it in the theaters, I can't help but love it and really appreciate it. I remember walking out of the theater going, huh, that was different, but also incredibly awesome. And I think where Reloaded really delivers more than anywhere is the action. And the action itself is completely different than the action in The Matrix, where the Matrix, I almost dare to say it was grounded, but like obviously it wasn't, but it feels grounded compared to Reloaded. But this movie, I think, is like a tent, and the tent poles, the things that prop it up, are its incredible action scenes sprinkled throughout. You know, it has a kick-ass opening again with Trinity, like the original movie, but it's even cooler, and it feels even more just kind of like movie. It's hard to explain. It's hard to explain the way this movie carries itself with the fights and the action scenes, but it's almost like, I don't know, the way this one kicks off and the flip and then the reveal of Trinity as she takes off her motorcycle helmet. It's like, that's right, we're back, and now we have $1 bajillion and we're making this crazy movie. And then from there, it just gets more and more insane. And technology was at an interesting point at this time because they started to go for the fully CGI computer-generated characters in certain scenes, and it falls a little flat. You can definitely tell the difference between a real person doing things and a fake person doing things in this movie. But even watching it now in HD on a new TV, like, it works. You still kind of can believe what's going on. I don't know how they did that, especially considering there are parts of this movie that rely on completely CGI characters and full CGI scenes before that stuff was really, really all over the place, and yet it's still watchable. And that is most notable in one of my favorite action scenes of all time. I love the courtyard fight with Neo and 1,000 Agent Smiths. It is one of the most incredible things I think ever made, ever put on film for like an action movie. You might think I'm stupid. I don't care. I might have a small brain. I don't care. This fight is absolutely incredible, the way it goes down, the way it just starts out of nowhere. You know, the revelation that Agent Smith is still around, and this time he's technically unplugged. He's a new man, and he's got clones, and Neo has to fight all of them. And the first half of this fight is Neo or Keanu Reeves doing good, real fighting, good choreography like he did in the previous Matrix movie, but almost seemingly more on fire, and fighting multiple people that look like Hugo Weaving, and it's all really convincing. I gotta say, go into the making of this movie, definitely check it out. It's really interesting how they do a lot of this stuff, but just when you're sitting there and you're absorbing it, it really looks like he's fighting a bunch of Hugo Weavings. And I just want to say something about Keanu Reeves in this movie. Like, he gets so much credit for John Wick and doing all the, yeah, you know, the first John Wick movie especially incredible. But that's Keanu that's Keanu sunsetting. Matrix Reloaded is absolutely the most incredible work Keanu has ever done in terms of this type of thing. The dedication, the training, the practicing. It looks so convincing. Yes, is the choreography in The Matrix Reloaded very exchangey, and it's very like character doing this, character doing this. Yes, but there's contact, and it's all convincing, and there are so many shots in this fight scene in particular in the beginning where there's not a lot of cuts, and you see him fighting multiple people, and it's all just incredibly coordinated. So yeah, like I'm giving Keanu Reeves a lot of credit with how fast he is, how on fire he is, how on point he is, yes, but it's also all the people behind the scenes making this, right? All the choreographers, all the people rigging people up on wires, the people shooting the movie, everything all is coming together perfectly to make these fights look downright incredible. Now then, this scene escalates to a point where it goes over the top, where he's fighting even more Agent Smiths, and it turns into a complete CGI fest where the Neo on screen most of the time isn't really even Keanu Reeves. It's just a CGI render of Keanu Reeves. And you can tell. You can absolutely tell. But it's still completely watchable. And I think it's still just awesome, and it really works. And it bounces back and forth between fake Keanu and real Keanu. And you can definitely kind of tell. But the most important thing, at least for me, watching the movie and watching it the first time back in the day, was that I was entertained and I could not look away. Everything about this whole entire fight, from the way it starts off, to him grabbing the pole and swinging it around, to the pylons, to the wrestling moves, to the weird flips, and Keanu wired up on everything, all of it I watch over and over again. Sometimes I'll just YouTube it and just watch it. It was also a really good example. I talked about the first Matrix movie being such a good case for early DVDs because of scene selection. This is another one. I would fire up scene selection on a bad day, having a bad day. Just watch the Keanu, the Agent Smith courtyard fight. It is. Then, like, I'm just gonna keep going, dude. The Merovingian mansion fight. It's almost my first place. It's like my second place. It's like right there next to the courtyard one. This fight is another one where it's like you're just watching someone on screen doing all this stuff, handling all these weapons. Yes, he's not technically like a black belt, you know, in these things, but it is convincing and well done. Keanu Reeves and all the other characters in the scene are handling these weapons, and it is so awesome. There are multiple exchanges with him and multiple people where it just stays on them and it shows the actors doing their thing. And you've probably heard like other like movie YouTubers talk about how important that is, but it's really prevalent here with something like this. There are so many moments from this scene in particular that are GIF worthy, from him having the two poles and blocking the two people, to him getting the size, like kind of like force pulling them off the wall because his powers, he can do whatever and nothing matters anymore. And that fight really, but like really everything now at this point, nothing matters anymore. It is kind of the theme for how The Matrix Reloaded kind of jumps the shark. But I don't mind it almost at all. While yes, I would love to have there been The Matrix and then a follow-up to The Matrix that kept that same exact mood, tone, and atmosphere. This one aims to go bigger. You have to admire that, even if it's not everybody's cup of tea, and I completely understand why. The Matrix is heady, it's moody, it's satisfying. The Matrix Reloaded is just popcorn fun. What they really did here was essentially make a superhero movie. You know, Neo carries all these like different abilities of multiple superheroes to him flying. Him flying was really before we had a Superman movie that could show that like that atmosphere rippling, shattering, flying at crazy speeds, and how they can kind of actually make it look convincing for the way he rockets around and shoots up into the sky through the clouds. Like all of that stuff was just really ahead of its time, especially considering now that's all we have in, well, not all we have, but like we have a lot of that in movies. It's really commonplace. You kind of take it for granted. But Neo here doing all this crazy stuff, it was incredible. Now, I'm going to talk about one more action scene, I think, that props up this whole movie, but I've been talking about that for a minute, so let me jump to supporting characters and stuff. In this movie, it's kind of all over the place, but there's a couple of things worth highlighting. Of course, Link, the operator, replacing Tank from the original movie, who died off screen, which is so bullshit. It's nice that they carried his legacy over with Link having a connection to him, but the fact that he just died off screen, like it was probably for like whatever like reasons behind the scenes, but like, man. But he works great as the dash of comedy and kind of like the real person in this situation reacting to these things in a way that works really well, that I think actually the first movie could have used a little more of that here and there. Also, just want to give a special shout out to Jada Pinkett Smith as Niobe, or really Niobe and Ghost, who were also spun off into the Enter the Matrix video game, which is a game that doesn't really hold up at all, but it absolutely was awesome when it came out, and I absolutely loved it. It was a broken mess, but it captured the Matrix feel the best it could in a video game. They were cool in this movie in little moments, but it was cool to see them and be like, yeah, they're in the video game, cool, you know, like just little things like that. Also, then we just have all the Zion stuff, all these side characters, all these supporting characters, kind of a little bit more of the politics, a little bit of the culture. And my problem with this whole thing is that, you know, the first movie was tell, not show. This movie is all show, and I think it showed too much. For me, the whole thing with Zion, the city, the last city of humanity, it's so massive and so crazy and so sprawling and so futuristic that it kind of loses some of the, I don't know, like the humanity of it, the agency of it. It just feels like this giant, massive city of people, and it's like, whatever. I think it was really just because of the first movie being so small and just kind of talking about it, you assume that it's kind of just like this little tiny band of survivors, like, you know, like the people surviving in Terminator 1 in the future or something like that. But it's not that. It's crazy and it's over the top and it goes full sci-fi. And you know what? If that's what they wanted to do, I mean, clearly they wanted to do that. Good. You want to build this massive sci-fi universe with a bunch of other ships and crews and a whole entire culture of people that only know this world? Sure. But it starts to lose the thread with me a little bit. And where it really does is just a lot of the extended dialogue sequences in this movie. They just drag this movie down to a screeching halt, and it's really jarring compared to all the action, because you have these conversations between these characters in these movies, and I'm all for stuff like this. I love a good Tarantino movie where he has characters on screen for 20 minutes talking about nothing. But here in particular, it comes off overly, I don't want to say full of itself. No, you know what? I do want to say full of itself. It's very high concept and discussing and philosophizing over all of these ideas, and it like half hits. You know, it needed to be shortened, I think. If they kind of clean up what they're talking about and make it a little bit more practical to what is going on, it would have helped. I appreciate that the Wachowskis wanted to make this movie like, you know, part amazing, insane Dragon Ball Z action movie, but also part like a discussion and an analysis of choice, which is the theme here really in a lot of ways, where the Matrix, as I talked about it in the last video, is all about belief and believing in yourself. At least that's what I took away from it. This one's all about choice and almost like destiny to a point. But that's the problem here, and it gets even worse in Revolutions. I think that's where it loses people, is that it becomes almost too high concept or too much talking. Like, that sounds like so reductive, and I never like that criticism. But for something like this, the ideas that the Matrix built in the first movie were well done and not dragged out and philosophized over. And, you know, the Matrix Reloaded and the Matrix Revolutions did, where it's to the point where I like everything that they built, and I love reading about it online and reading descriptions of it and analysis of it and all that fun stuff. But watching the movie, not as much. Because then it's so jarring when you go to something like the insane, incredible, extended action scene on the freeway where they're never supposed to go. It's the most dangerous place you can go as an operative. And they do it, and it is just a mile-a-minute awesome sequence with just a really good chase on a highway with some agents, and then of course the invisible twins or whatever, I forgot their names. I'm not even gonna look it up because it doesn't matter. They didn't even bother to tell you in the movie. But you have that going on, and then it extends over to a motorcycle sequence, which is so goddamn thrilling. It, for me, has kind of what Jurassic Park has, where a lot of scenes in the original Jurassic Park, I still watch it. I love it. I'm wearing... this wasn't even my intention. There's moments where you watch Jurassic Park and you go, how did they do that? That still looks real. That still looks really real, like stuff with the T-Rex and stuff like that. This scene with Trinity riding the motorcycle, I go, that's real. How did they do that? Obviously, like watching the making of and stuff, I know how they did it. And if you really, really look closely, you can kind of tell. But even just saying that, kind of tell, this looks like a real woman on a motorcycle dodging cars in traffic in real life. And it is amazing. It's another scene I can watch over and over again. Every moment, every frame of it is memorable, down to shifting over to Morpheus with a samurai sword, cutting the Cadillac in half, and then like turning around with an Uzi and shooting it and blowing it up, and to the trucks crashing into one another, and then in slow motion it shows the rippling of the trucks, only for Neo as Superman to fly in at the last second and grab them and pull them out. I'm running. Breathe. I'm sorry, it's all so good, and I love it. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is by talking about this, I love it. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from, even if maybe you weren't into The Matrix Reloaded, or maybe give it another chance. Maybe even skip some of the boring scenes and just watch the cool stuff, because you know what? I don't know, man. Fists go boom, guns go pow. This all coincides with kind of like a gutsy and weird attempt for like an ending where you get to see Neo essentially use powers, but in the real world, which is something that, oh wait, he's the one, he only has powers in the digital realm, the computer realm, the Matrix, right? But then all of a sudden, he can seemingly use some sort of powers, have some sort of ability. And I think that shows how, well, really the whoa of it, the what the hell of him doing that, the impact of that really shows how good of a job The Matrix and The Matrix Reloaded did with at least setting up some of the rules of this world and what can and cannot happen, or really just setting up like the situation, you know, the vibe. And in a movie with Reloaded where it goes really crazy and all over the place, you know, and sometimes a little bit too much, but for that one rule to be shattered where you do see Neo take down the Sentinel, you go, whoa, wow, what the hell? What's that about? And then, of course, it leads to be continued, where you're going to have hopefully more of those questions answered in the next movie. Really gutsy and weird to have a cliffhanger like that also ends on the Agent Smith thing infiltrating the world. Interesting setup for the next movie. Admittedly, though, really clumsy, but at least it's another Matrix movie that ends with a kick-ass Rage Against the Machine song that hits so perfectly well, just as Wake Up did in the original Matrix. Here we have Calm as a Bomb, which like the chorus for it is just so awesome. There's something to be said about that, like the art of like a movie ending and a hard cut to good music. I love it. I'm tired. I'm exhausted about talking about this, but I've been making videos online now for almost 10 years in various places, and I've never talked about Matrix Reloaded like this. So if you got to the end of this video, that means the world to me. Thank you. Like, I never in a million years would I think anybody would want to hear what I have to say about not even really a very good Matrix movie in a lot of ways, but is also still so incredible. Thank you for being here. And if you got this far, thank you so much. That's all I can say. I'm not going to ask you to click the like button or subscribe or anything like that. Thank you for being here. I want to know what you think about The Matrix Reloaded. What is your favorite scene? Like I was talking about the action, crazy tentpole sequences. You know, the highway scene, the intro, the fight with Seraph in the tea house, the courtyard fight, the Merovingian mansion, all of those. I want to hear your favorite and why. That's what I want to share. Share the love. If there's any redeeming moments of this movie that you want to talk about, maybe even plot-wise or theme-wise, let me know what you think. But again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for sticking around with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate that you get just me trying to put out stuff I love. So thanks for watching. I'm Jake Baldino. You can subscribe because video games. Pizza's on me.